Drivers, start your engines!
Hit the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there, I want you to be perfect.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. It's him, but he talks to me.
Well, I wanna be a race car driver, pretty girls eating from my hand, yeah. Wanna live a life of fun and danger, no sweating working for the man, alright.
Well, good evening, race fans. Welcome to the Hoobazoo Radio Network. Welcome to the Drafting the Circuits program. My name is Frank Santarosky. I'll be your host for the next hour as my friends and I, Louise and Richard, talk about everything racing, go over the races from last week, do a little preview of next week. Fellas, how we doing today?
Good, thank you.
At least it was sunny today.
At least it was sunny today. Yep. So
have you dried out since Portland yet, Louise?
My cameras are good. My jacket got improved. It's just the clothes I need to wash before I head to a near 100-degree weekend again.
All right,
well, there you go.
So you're off to Sonoma for the Cup race, right?
That is correct.
Right,
Trucks in Arca West 2.
And you're back from the Xfinity debut out in the Pacific Northwest, your home area of the country in Portland. We'll get into that race in a little bit, but before we do, I want to let you know our program is sponsored by Dan Bley Racing Art. That's Bley, B-L-E-Y. Find him on Facebook. Get your custom diecast from Dan. He does fantastic work, and his son Michael does some work too. And he's been trained by the best. Those guys' stuff look great. Also, Mark Dill and Legend of the First Super Speedway. You can pick up Mark's book on his website, superspeedway.com. I'm sorry, firstsuperspeedway.com. As well as there's the treasure trove of racing history, old clips, old articles, stuff dating from the early years of racing in the 1910s to the 30s. So that being said, let's talk about racing from the 20s, that being the 2020s, 2022, Detroit, last race on Belle Isle. And what we saw was some very interesting different strategies play out. So we had a race that went caution free the whole time, which hurt some guys' strategy and helped other guys, certainly. But at the end of the day, it was Will Power, who looks as solid as ever, retakes the championship lead after a disappointing Indy 500. But Will has been remarkably consistent this year. He's been remarkably cool, calm, and just very mature, very smart driving. And he had a strategy that was a little risky, but he made it work. So, but let's talk about those strategies a little bit. So if you watch IndyCar, you know we have the red tire and the black tire. The red tire is faster, but it is also much softer, and it wears out pretty quick. And once they start to wear down, the lap times fall off dramatically. The black tires are a little slower, but they last a lot longer, and they're very consistent throughout a long run. So there's a couple of different ways you can play that, because you have to have at least one stint on your red tires. So some guys they start on the reds, and some of these guys are in as early as lap 7 or 8. Get rid of them reds, which pretty much makes it a 3-stop race for them. They just go ahead and resign themselves to a 3-stop race, unless there's like a tremendous amount of cautions where you won't have to, you can maybe stretch the fuel. The second option is to start on the blacks, run the reds in the middle. The reds last a little longer when there's more rubber on the track. Try to get the most you can out of those. To make this strategy work, you'd have to really maximize your blacks on the first set. Make your reds last as long as you can, and make sure you're within a fuel window to finish them. And that's usually the preferred strategy. Now, Will Power opted to start on blacks, put blacks on the second stint. And those 2 stints, he tried to stretch the fuel as long as he could. And then he tried to build up the biggest lead he could on his second stint on the blacks and just take it as long as he could and then finish up on the reds. And he was looking at about 20 laps on those reds at the end. But he was able to play it perfectly. Newgarden tried the same strategy last year, and it backfired to the point that he almost made it work, but Pato O'Ward was able to catch him at the very end of the race and take the win. This year, it looked like Rossi was in a position to take that win from Power as Power's lap times were falling off. But as it turned out, Rossi simply, ran out of laps in the race. Had there been one, maybe two more laps, I think Rossi would have gotten around Will as his lap times fell off dramatically. Now,
it would have been one big statement victory for sure. And regarding Rossi, because we're now going into 3 years without a win, and we know this is it for him with Andretti. It would have been something had he pulled it off.
As a matter of fact, the next race on the schedule is his 3-year anniversary of his last win, Road America. So he's pretty hyped to go there, coming off a rather strong performance in Detroit. But let's talk about the guy who blew the strategy, and that being Joseph Newgarden, who started from the pole. Now, admittedly, he probably wouldn't have been on pole had it not been for an incident that kind of ended the Fast Six session early, and that involved Grosjean getting off course and getting in the wall.
That was a big hit.
That was a big hit, but there were a couple of guys on flyers that probably would have nipped Joseph for the pole, but as it turned out, Grosjean put it early into the session. So Joseph opts to start on reds, right? But then they make the curious decision, and I hate to say it this way, but they really shit the bed with this strategy. They instead of making a 3-stop, they tried to start with reds and still do a 2-stop. So they tried to stretch out those reds as long as they could, which ended up being 19 or 20 laps, which by the end of that run, Newgarden was nearly 5 seconds off the pace. Other guys that started on reds were in as early as, lap 7, 8, 9. Go ahead and get rid of those reds. So very curious to start on the reds when there's less rubber on the track. And it just didn't work out. But Newgarden tried power strategy last year. That didn't work out. So it looks like Joseph's a little snake bitten at Detroit. And then, of course, Will had a shot at winning last year. And when they had the late red, well, that's the guy that car didn't start. So,
Yep. And ironically, you mentioned Grosjean. Grosjean will probably be one of the few drivers that will be glad they're leaving Belle Isle, because he has wrecked 3 cars at that one, all pretty big ones when you think about it. He wrecked both races in last year, one of them which ultimately brought the red, and then of course in qualifying. So, but yeah, it's a shame for Newgarden, because like McLaughlin, both of them started off really well, but suddenly they're kind of skinning off a little bit. Whereas Will Power, excluding Indy, he has finished in the top 4 all season, and that's what you need to do in IndyCar these days to be a championship contender or even win it all. You have to be delivering excellent results. And for Power to do so, get his redemption win in the final race at Belle Isle, it's got to be sweet that he got a win essentially still early enough in the season compared to what we've seen the last few years. They come very late in the year where he's already out of contention. So I'm curious to see how Power continues that momentum. But like you said, different energy, different vibe. And rather than kind of like dwelling on the negatives, he's found a way to capitalize after a rather miserable month of May in the 500.
Yeah, Will he's something has made him a changed man. I don't know. I don't know if I could point to one thing, but he says, he's very open to say his mental state is better than it's ever been. And it's quite obvious in his driving. This Detroit race, again, like I said, the strategy was a little risky, and it did not work last year for his teammate Joseph Newgarden, but he played it perfectly. Will didn't put a wheel wrong all day. He started from 16th. He wasn't great in qualifying, started from 16th and was able to build up a lead of, oh my gosh, what was it? Nearly 30 seconds before Rossi started running him down as his tires were going off. Yeah, it was played absolutely perfectly. It was, as if somebody scripted the thing. But yeah, great for Will. I mean, I've always been a fan of Will, and I've kind of wondered the last couple of years if the 2014 was his high water mark when he won the championship. He may never see another championship, but he's driving better than nearly everybody else in the field right now, and he's going to be tough to beat. I mean, he looks a little what's the word, Disconesque.
I couldn't tell you what that word is, unfortunately. So I'm not.
Yeah, he's looking quick.
Dixonesque.
Yeah,
Dixonesque. Oh, there we go.
Dixonesque. Yeah, the guy. That's the guy from New Zealand won 6 championships. I know. I coined the word. It's all right.
I was thinking sporty, as Joey would say sometimes about some drivers.
All right. So now, Richard, I know you had a chance to watch the race.
Yep.
Our last race on the island. So, what are some of your takeaways from the race? What are some of your things that you enjoyed or maybe disliked about this one?
I thought it was a great race. Not the most interesting in terms of there wasn't a lot of cautions and a lot of guys making mistakes or what have you, but I thought it was a really, really good, entertaining race from as you mentioned there, Frank, from a strategy perspective. And, seeing how 2 or 3 at times very diverging strategies sort of converged into one final result was fantastic. In Formula One these days, which you think is the ultimate strategy sort of racing series, it all seems to sort of like, everybody seems to maximize the same strategy and it's all a little bit blur, but not in this instance. No, I thought IndyCar got put on a great show from a strategy perspective, and some fantastic driving, disciplined driving, nursing the tires. And I think Power for the last 20 or so laps there, nursing those red tires to the end was very, very impressive drive, and didn't make a mistake all day. So fully deserving of the race victory. One thing I would like to see coming out of it, and I know it's difficult on a road course like that is a real road course, is better timing and scoring on the pylon from the spectators or from the TV viewerships. Because I was watching it on TV and I was struggling to keep up at times with what the gaps were. At one point, Will was like 20 seconds ahead on a lap, and then it was 40 seconds, and it dropped down to 10, and then eventually it all sort of caught up. But God, it's difficult to try and keep up and work out where everybody was. But I thought it was a fantastic race, and Belle Isle is one of those sort of like iconic circuits, isn't it? In a way, it's not the greatest circuit in the world, but it's just a shame not to go back there, because I think it does produce some half decent racing. And but on next year to see what the circuit is like down in downtown Detroit there. And I thought it was a good send off for the track, and let's see what next year brings.
Yeah, well, and the nice thing about that is when they first started going to Belle Isle, there wasn't a lot there. It wasn't. It didn't have all the kind of bells and whistles that it has now. They've got the atrium there and the hanging gardens and all the really nice stuff in the park. And much to the dismay of some folks, that the race takes that away for a couple of months a year while they're doing build up and you're doing setup and breakdown. But at the end of the day, it's the race and Roger Penske that has really funded the improvements to that park. And it's an absolutely beautiful facility to go to this day and age. It's a wonderful place to, take your family and spend the day. And that's Roger Penske and his group. And I believe he said over the years, they've invested nearly $20 million into the aisle, and not into the race, just into the island itself, and really turn that from kind of a it's there to a wonderful place to go.
Yeah, it's one of those tracks that I had loved to have seen, because most of more or less of that, the anemones and all, and the amenities they have done over the years, because it looks completely different than it was in 1992. It looks even different when it was in 2000. And also, it's going to be sad to see a tradition go away, because I thought the water fountain thing was a neat tradition, especially if it's a warm day, Belle Isle. not a bad thing to cool off in the fountain.
Oh no, certainly not. That was Ryan Hunter-Reay that started the tradition of jumping in the fountain. And it's funny how these things that somebody does once just catches on. Like it was Dale Jarrett who decided to kiss the bricks after the Brickyard 400 one time. Now everybody does that, from the Indy 500 to the SVRA to the Indy Lights guys that
even
that when they're
touring, even the touring guide stuff.
Oh yeah, people that go there just to visit the track.
Yeah,
that's a thing to do. Get a picture of yourself kissing the bricks. Yeah. So, and I wonder if people go into Detroit and jump in the fountain. Just to,
do we know the layout of the track for next year?
Yes, it's quite interesting. It's not. I mean, there's a couple 90-degree corners, but the interesting thing, they have a split pit lane. With half the pits on the left, half the pits on the right. And then when they leave pit lane, they've got like a merging lane there. So that could be a little fun to watch. But the track, it's uninspired would be a word I would use to say it. It doesn't really look like much. It looks a little like the old Cleveland circuit, although the thing Cleveland had going for it was that it was tremendously wide, and they can get 7, 8 wide.
God, wasn't it Cleveland? Was it Cleveland where was it Castaneda's got done for blocking on a ridiculous call a few years ago?
Edmonton.
That was Edmonton.
Sorry.
Yeah, another airport road course. Yeah. So, but the it'd be interesting to see. I mean, the first couple of races.
Oh, I see what you mean by the split. But I've just pulled up a photograph. Yeah, I see what you mean by the split pit lane.
They got a split pit lane. Yep. So. But man, the first couple races in downtown Detroit were Formula One races, and they were, they were nothing but complaints from the drivers about everything from the quality of the racing surface to to the lack of garages, which Formula One only stayed there. What was it, 7 years? I think they stayed there longer than they wanted to, simply because that was their only presence in the U.S. for a couple of years. But once they got out of there, they became a kart race, and then eventually they move it over to the Isle. But I'd be interested to see how the downtown circuit looks next year. I mean, Detroit itself as a city has undergone a little bit of a downtown renaissance, but there's still just massive unemployment in the area, and there's city block after city block after city block of abandoned homes in the outskirts of Detroit. So
it's your prototypical 8-mile cliche stuff that people have heard about Detroit.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I'll be curious to see how that goes. At least it should look a little bit better than it was back in the day. We'll see.
They should go to one of the proving grounds and race around like Ford's proving ground or something, shouldn't they?
Oh, that would be fun. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I still remember the first time I
don't know. Go to Michigan International Speedway.
Yeah, I know, right? That's you sound like most of the old timer IndyCar fans. Go back to Michigan, Fontana, and Milwaukee. Yeah,
that one in Michigan, Milwaukee, is like it'll be neat. Fontana, we already know there's a stipulation, finale or bust. That's their mentality.
Yeah, but even when they had a finale, nobody showed up. So
yeah, that's true.
So
it's what the track wanted, but they never got it, and they never came back. I still remember that Robin Miller post-race comments to this day when it came out.
Yeah. So, but that's another story for another day. We are off to Road America next, which, like we said, is the site of Alexander Rossi's last win 3 years ago. He's coming out of Detroit with great momentum. Again, this is a track that he performs really well at. It's right in his wheelhouse. He seems to be, now that he has his future secured, just more focused on his driving. As we saw, he had a great weekend in Detroit. So I think Rossi could be a real factor here in Road America, but there's other guys that do great there as well. Plus we'll see the road course debut of Beth Peretta Racing they'll have Simona Di Silvestro in the car at Road America, and Peretta and Simona, they were there in Ed Carpenter's pit at Detroit, just kind of gleaning a little information. They've got a technical alliance with Ed Carpenter, so that'll be another car on the grid that we haven't seen this year so far. So Road America be a lot of fun. It's one of the great road courses. So Richard, who do you like for Road America?
I'm going to plump for Will Power again. I think he's going to go back to back, and I think he's looking good, as you said. He normally has a bad start to the season and sort of recoups towards the end of the year. But I think this year he hasn't had an amazing start, but he's had a good enough start. Excuse me. So, yeah, very impressed. And I think he's going to put a little run together here.
Oh, yeah, that's a excellent pick right there. Yeah, Power's on fire right now. So, Louise, who do you like?
I'm gonna probably, since he got Will, I'm gonna go with Rossi. I think the drought ends, which I believe if Rossi ends his drought, I want to think Dixon is next in line, or Sato ended the longest drought. I know Dixon has been over a year now, but I'm going with Rossi with this one. He ends it at Road America this coming Sunday.
Yeah, it doesn't exactly to the race. Yep, 3 years and over. Who won at Road America last year? I'm trying to remember. Was it Felix, or Felix won 2 years ago? Right.
Felix hasn't won since.
Oh no! Palou won last year.
Yeah, that was I think the one where Newgarden had it in control, and then he had reliability problems at the very end when Ed Jones spun it and brought out a caution, and I think because of that, Cody Ware got a top 20 out of that whole race.
Yeah, but Palou's been a little quiet this year, and as far as race wins, he was really strong in Indy, but again, we discussed the problems with the pits closing on him. So I think Palou could do really well here. And another guy you want to watch out for is Potable Ward.
Yeah, I was thinking about going with him to win it, but I felt like maybe this is where the streak ends for the drought ends for Rossi. I would not count Pato out.
No, Rossi's a good pick. He's won twice there, and in dominating fashion too. So, all right, so I'm gonna stick with Palou. I'm sorry, I'm gonna stick with Award rather. And we'll just see how that all plays out. But Road America, again, one of my favorite places to go see a race. They've got some of the best track food you'll ever have, particularly if you like that Wisconsin-style bratwurst, and fresh cheese curds are abundant in that area. So, looking forward to that race a ton. But now, Louise, you spent last week standing in the rain at Portland, where the Xfinity Series made their debut there. So let's talk about that a little bit, because it was took a while to get that race in. They went well over their television time, but again, when you have a wet race in the rain, you're going to see that it's going to take a little longer to complete. So, but at the end of the day, it was AJ Allmendinger, who you can never count on a road course, despite the fact that he started pretty far in the back, worked his way up, ended up in the back again, worked his way up again. And it just, he kind of played everything perfectly and was there when it mattered most.
He wrecked before the green flag, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yes.
On top of the fact he was supposed to roll off 10th, they made adjustments to the car, so he had to start in the rear. And then he went off, and he lost so much time. In fact, the start of the race when Anthony Alfredo laid the field to the green flag, half of them were in the first group. Then 10, 15 seconds later, the second group came along. It's like, what is this, IMSA with these DPI GTLMs? It was split in half, and then way back, it was Allmendinger.
Problem that 40 seconds back, wasn't they?
Yeah, he was. I think he lost a lap before the end of the first stage, which Ty Gibbs was in control of. The funny thing about that race, it was relatively clean. Yeah, you had moments where cars lost control. all over the place, but it didn't get very hairy and wild until the end of the second stage, towards the end of stage 2, when the track was getting dry. Yes, at some point in the race, it got dry. It was getting dry, so it stopped raining. But Gibbs had the thing in the bag, and then suddenly, when one of the caution periods, Jesse Iwuji was already multiple laps down. Everybody knows the story about Iwuji in that 34 car, to where he's not well received in the sense of how off the pace he is. But when Gibbs was slowing down, Iwuji got into Gibbs, turned him around. Fortunately, he had a big enough lead that he was able to get it back going, didn't lose too much ground, much to the chagrin of Robbie Gordon and Marcus Ambrose in Montreal 07. He kept the spot, but he would ultimately lose the lead to Andy Lally because they had a little bit of a moment later on. And then, of course, Gibbs and Noah Gragson got into it. Gragson assured he'll pay back Ty Gibbs at some point this season, to the point that he even bought Jesse Iwuji gear that he shared on Snapchat. So the message is clear that Noah Gregson's not big. It's not a Ty Gibbs fan.
Yeah, I saw that. Somebody posted that.
Most of JRM aren't, because remember, Sam Mayer is also Gregson's teammate.
Yeah. So now Jesse Iwuji is an interesting guy. If you recall, we had him on the show here a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And I really like the guy. I mean, he's older than your average, upstart guy in Xfinity. He's had a full military career behind him, very distinguished military career. He's worked some time as a recruiter as well. But he enjoys racing. Yeah, he enjoys racing. But we had him on the show, and he's a really interesting guy, real nice guy. He works really hard. He tries really hard. But I can't help but thinking he's in a little over his head in the Xfinity Series.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's one of those things that speaks volumes. Like at Texas, he didn't qualify the car. He had military-related activity that he had to go to. So Kyle Wetterman qualified the 34 car. He put that thing inside the top 20. And then when I was Texas, I was thinking, 34 car actually qualified really good. And then lo and behold, unbeknowingly, because I have my mind goes through 1,000 miles an hour. I do writing and photography. I can't keep up with everything all the time. I wasn't 100% aware that Kyle Wetterman qualified the car until the day of the race, where Iwuji was already, the 34 was well off the pace. And then I realized, well, that explains a lot, because Kyle Wetterman, no secret, he's had some stout runs for Mike Harmon, where he had top 10 in one of the Kentucky races. So it kind of became evident that Wetterman, if you put him in whatever car, he'll make the most of it. And in that case, he did in qualifying. And some people on social media have been vouching that they should put Wetterman in the 34 on a regular basis, rather than just be a stand-in qualifying guy that puts it in the top 20. But it's one of those ordeals where sometimes there's integrity, and also just a competition to where you gotta be mindful. It was a freak incident ordeal, but sometimes a freak incident could be too much for a lot of people, and justifiably so to a lot, because stuff like that shouldn't happen.
To take the leader out during a caution is, you're gonna. I don't care who you are, you're gonna hear about that for a while.
Yeah, and it's just one of those ordeals, and then that kind of ultimately hurt Gibbs as the race went by, to where he was not even in the picture. Instead, who were in the picture were Jade Buford, who was running his first race back in the 48 after being essentially replaced by guys like Cass Gralla and Tyler Reddick, of which Reddick won that Texas race in the 48. He stayed out on dry, so did J.J. Yaley, who was dealing with a bad thumb where he can literally move it. He cannot move it. So I was thinking, Yaley and Buford in the penultimate restart, it was either going to end well or was it going to end disastrous. Guys like Allmendinger, Myatt Snyder, who won stage 2 over Andy Lally, and speaking of Lally, as him as well, Justin Allgaier, dive bombed into turn 1. 4-1 was not going to work, and guys like Allgaier, Lally, and Patrick Emmerling, and five or six others got into it. Hurt their chances of winning, but they had another late race caution. So that all of a sudden, Allmendinger went from starting in the rear, being way behind already before the green flag, losing a lap, getting his lap back to now to the front. And Allmendinger's made it no secret that he's very hard on himself. So he can't get a little frustrated. So, but he kept his composure, let the race come to him, and it did. And lo and behold, he was able to pull away from Myatt Snider and get the win at Portland. Now he's distinctly known as a Grand Prix winner and a stock car winner at Portland because his first Champ Car win was indeed in the Pacific Northwest on Father's Day back in 2006, and his father was there that day. He was also there when he won this past Saturday.
Right, and that was that was the first of 3 Champ Car wins in a row for Allmendinger before he
before he dipped to NASCAR.
Before he ended up being a NASCAR guy, yeah. So, but now you mentioned Myatt Snider. No, I'll tell you, I was impressed with the kid, man. He really knows his way around the road course. Now we know he spent what he spent. He spent a season racing the NASCAR Euro Series.
Yeah, and that kind of certainly
is a lot of it's a lot of road courses and racing against a lot of guys with a lot of road course experience. So that really paid off for young Myatt Snider.
Yeah,
so he had a really good day. It was very impressive.
He had a strong weekend a really strong weekend. And that's something that he's been needing for a long time. Like he could get a run on road courses. Doesn't matter the conditions. It's just he needed some luck on his side because he's well down in the points as far as to battling. If I remember, he was over 40 points behind Ryan C, who has the 12th and final playoff spot going in. So there's a really tight battle, and I think putting a really superb result is going to cut the gap, and it's also encouraging for the Jordan Anderson camp that really need some runs going because they have not had the best luck. Of course, Snider had that horrific wreck at Daytona on the last lap, which is what people remember his season so far. But a run like that will certainly boost momentum and morale. Another driver that had a really strong weekend until he got taken out in an incident was Sheldon Creed. Sheldon Creed was quick. He was right in the top 3, top 5 for pretty much the whole entire race. And then with one of the chicane restarts and that infamous Shelton chicane that they used to call it the festival curb, he got taken out by Buford and it collected guys like Jeb Burton, Daniel Hemrick, and all those guys. And Creed tried to bring the car all the way back to the pits, but it just died on him. And Creed made sure Buford was number 1 twice. Of which he didn't get penalized for. So,
and poor old Jay Buford, he was he's driving a car towards the end of the race. It looked like he entered it in a demolition derby the night before.
Well, there were a lot of cars.
There are a lot of cars that look like that. Yeah,
and muddy.
Yeah. But Jade was up close to the front with his. So yeah, so interesting thing. So here's a question I have for you, Richard, who has worked in NASCAR. I did notice. And this is just a very innocuous kind of thing that caught my eye, but the windshield wipers on the Xfinity cars, right?
Yeah.
I noticed that there seemed to be like different settings on them. Some of those guys had it just going just right in front of where the driver's face would be. Some of them had them going about halfway across the windshield, and some of them had it going where it was going back and forth, cleaning the whole windshield. Is that a driver's choice kind of thing, or is that or is that the thing malfunctioning?
No, it's a driver or team's choice typically. The windshield wiper that you can buy is a OEM part off the street. Companies like Bosch, for example, make them. So it's just a standard car part, a high-end standard car part, but you'll typically have different settings on that. There'll be 3 or 4 different controls that you could set the wiper to, in terms of its range. So you could have, say, for example, a 30-degree sweep, a 60-degree sweep, and a 90-degree sweep. And all that it will be is whichever of those, because they only have one setting in the Cup Series, they don't have multiple settings. What it'll be is whichever the teams pick, basically, of those 3 or 2, depending on the model that they buy. But Yeah. Now, what you will notice is the parked position of the windshield wiper. You'll notice it's never flat to the windshield. It's normally pointing upwards at an angle, or to a certain extent. And
Yes,
that's actually
yes,
an
it
aero
is, yeah.
gain. That's
Okay.
an aero gain. That they'll actually run these cars through the wind tunnel with the windshield wiper on, and they'll adjust the angle of the windshield wiper to find the optimum aero benefit from that windshield wiper position.
And this is why we've seen guys occasionally won't run the windshield wiper on a car when it's not even raining.
Yeah, exactly.
They've got it right there as a So
yeah. Now
I've noticed that. So
I think so. There's two things that, and I may be wrong, but I think there's two things you have to run in a road course in the NASCAR series. You have to have a windshield wiper, and you have to have a rain light, even if it's at Sonoma, which I don't think they've seen rain there in the last 15 years, never mind actually during a race.
Not since 2013, which had a caution for rain, which I believe is the only time we have had caution for rain in Sonoma history, to my knowledge.
No,
yeah,
Sonoma stays pretty dry. The brown grass, grass attests to that.
Yeah, the Cup Series are there this weekend, and you'll probably see all of the cars there have a windshield wiper and the rain light, even though the chances of it running are pretty remote. Now, I don't know whether they, and it's purely for an aero perspective. I don't think you have to run it. I think you can take it off and install it when it rains, because I think in NASCAR, when it rains, starts to rain, they'll actually throw a red flag and have like an enforced pit stop. It's the going the other way that the teams can make the call on when they go back to dry tires. But when it starts to rain, I think NASCAR stops the race and insists that everybody goes on to wet weather tires, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I mean, that'd be a smart call, yeah. So you don't.
So it gives the teams the opportunity to do things like install a windshield wiper. But yeah, it's certainly an aero benefit rather than a hindrance.
Yeah, so I really appreciate you explaining that to me, because I just, I had actually never noticed it before that there's, different guys are cleaning larger parts or smaller parts of their windshield. So, but,
yeah, it's sometimes that maybe the driver finds the windshield wiper distracting, so they'll put it on a bigger sweep, so it's basically in front of him less often than if it was on a wider sweep, a narrower sweep. So it's a lot of personal preference from a driver or a team perspective.
Thank you. Again, it's interesting stuff. As I was watching this, it just happened to, it just really caught my eye, because there was, so much rain and so many windshield wipers.
Yeah.
So, all right. So where are we off to next in Xfinity? Are we at Sonoma? We're not.
No.
Right?
Xfinity is off weekend.
I think Xfinity got 2 weeks off, haven't they? They're at Nashville the next one.
Mm-hmm. All three series will be in Nashville in 2 weeks, because Cup will have their lone weekend off after Sonoma. Keyword: lone weekend off.
Right.
So Sonoma's post Sonoma is when the TV coverage changes. Is that correct as well?
That is correct. NBC from Nashville onwards.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the IndyCar race was on the USA Network. I know it's a little bit too late, but it's a side note.
The funny thing was how many people didn't realize that, right? People are on social media. I couldn't find the IndyCar race. I'm like, well, IndyCar published their schedule with the listings of where every race and what network they would be on at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, on top of the fact, NBCSN has been under since New Year's Day, 2022.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, you just got these people like they're bitching on social media. I couldn't find the IndyCar race. I'm like, hey, you know how Google works?
You know how to remote control voice button.
I was gonna say the information is not hard to come by this day and age. But anyway,
channel surf.
That's another story for another day. Yeah, because it used to be you'd have to sit on your chair and tell your little kid to get up there and turn the knob for you. But even then, there's only 3 channels to choose from. No, I mean, you just press guide on your thing and scroll through until you see IndyCar race. I just think, well, I mean, we know for a fact IndyCar fans like to bitch. And TV coverage is something they like to bitch about tremendously, and amount of commercials is the only thing that people bitch about more than the fact that, oh, I'm not paying for Peacock or I couldn't find the race because it's on USA. I'm like, okay.
You need it for Toronto.
I was going to say USA is in more households than NBCSN was, So, but anyway, I digress. So let's talk about the Cup debut in Gateway. Okay. Now, yeah. Richard, you had the pleasure of spending some time up in Gateway, and you told me that you felt like the facility needed a little more work. And you did told me they were actually working on some stuff. You were there. They're adding some additional grandstands, which was nice because they had a fantastic crowd.
They needed it.
Yeah, they had a fantastic crowd. Of course, Cup coming to town is always a big deal the first year when they come. And it looked like the folks really enjoyed it. I mean, Fox TV spent a lot of time showing some crowd shots, right? Yeah, where they put the camera on some folks in the audience until they noticed they were on the Jumbotron and start waving. But the thing for me that I thought was really kind of heartwarming was that there were so many families with children and so many young kids with their ball caps and their T-shirts of their favorite drivers, just having a great time. And we really need to, make sure that we get that next generation of race fans, take them to the races and whatnot. I'm so glad that they fill the stands, and it was so nice to see all these families out there with the children, just having a great time enjoying the race. And they put on a good show. Yeah, they had pyrotechnics and fireworks and all kind of other things and country music concerts. But in between all that, they actually had a race, and it was our friend Joey Logano, who seems to, whenever they add a new track, Joey says, well, I'll go ahead and win that first. I'll go ahead and take care of that for you. So Joey fending off Kyle Busch at the end of the day. But Louise, you get a chance to watch a lot of Gateway because I missed the beginning because I was watching the IndyCar race, but I felt like the Gen 7 cars put on a pretty good show for the folks there.
Everybody was trying to chase down Ross Chastain because Ross Chastain has apparently had a rough going, especially with Denny Hamlin, to the point that we have another Hamlin Twitter war. This time involves he and Justin Marks because Ross and Denny kind of ran at each other many of times, and Chastain felt like he owed an apology to a lot of the competitors. Sink earlier,
like half the field, yeah. I mean, his post-race interview was the most interesting thing I've ever seen, where he said, "Yeah, I just need to stop running into other guys, man. I can't believe I did that." I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, yeah. So nice takeaway from the race. Yeah, but yeah, Ross made no friends.
Yeah, and the Busch brothers had another strong run. Kurt with another top 5 to his name. Kyle and Logano were battling hard, and I felt like Kyle kind of washed up the track a little bit in the final restart, allowing Logano to get by and take the win. And I said that Logano will win because he can experience, for those who have previously ran Gateway, even though the car, when it was the Nationwide Series, the cars are vastly different to where we are running now. Everything about Gateway when it was, it's different for the competitors, because in my mind, it started looking like maybe even at one point Kevin Harvick was having a strong showing, and then he walloped the wall, and now he's on the outside looking in, which he hasn't been since 2014, the year he won the championship, excluding the Daytona 500, of course. So Harvick all of a sudden is not looking pretty good right now in general, to the point he's behind Tyler Reddick and Eric Almirola to make the playoffs by points. And with Logano winning, that's another repeat winner. So we're now slowly but surely seeing repeat winners, which helps those guys in the points like Chase Elliott, Almirola, and Tyler Reddick for now. But it does no favors.
Yes, limiting the amount of winning you're in, guys. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and another, and it was while Chastain made no friends, he still got a top 10. It's another Trackhouse afternoon where one car does well, the other not too well. More often than not, as Daniel Suarez on the short end of the stick again and again and again. And another side note, with Chris Buescher being sidelined with COVID protocols, Zane Smith from the Truck Series, who drives for Front Row Motorsports, Front Row Motorsports. So we'll make sure it didn't say Furniture Row because sometimes it can be confusing. But finished 17th in the 17 car. He had a little bit of a scary moment on pit road where he overshot his pits, and they had to pull the car back before he actually went to the stall. In spite of that, for a guy that all intents and purposes was this close to being a Cup rookie, at a certain race team didn't sell their Cup program to another team. We would talk about Zane Smith being a Cup regular this year, but that's not the case. He, of course, is finishing the Truck Series runner-up the last 2 years. For a guy that has driven limited amount of times in Xfinity and now with his Cup debut, he has showcased a lot of good things. And on a short notice to get a top 20, I was expecting him to be top 25 at most. But the fact that he got it inside the top 20, albeit attrition was involved, but for the most part, he kept himself out of trouble and put up a great showing, which will come a long way over time, because sooner or later we're going to see Zane Smith in the Cup Series. I'd imagine
so, yeah. But good day for the Penske cars, all of them, because Logano obviously taking the win. Blaney was right up there in the mix. Cindric was in there in the mix for a little while. I'm not sure where he finished, but he was up there near the front. But it's just nice. Again, Roger Penske put a little bow tie on the weekend between Wheel Power winning at Detroit, which is, Roger's, the race Roger promotes with Chevrolet, and then Logano winning in a Gateway. So nice weekend for the captain there. But I did notice something odd. And again, this is just as dumb as the windshield wiper thing I was talking about. So, Louise, you remember at Texas when we saw Joseph Newgarden running a livery that we have associated with Kyle McLaughlin. And Kyle McLaughlin was running a livery that we associated with Joseph Newgarden.
Kyle McLaughlin, never heard of Kyle, but I heard of Scott McLaughlin. But yeah, we talked about this a lot.
No, Kyle McLaughlin is the actor. Oh, he was in but Scott McLaughlin, yes, thank you for correcting me. Because my brain goes faster than my mouth sometimes.
Wasn't Kyle McLaughlin the actor from The Doors who played Ray Manzarek?
Oh, I don't know. He was on dark-headed guy. I can't remember. He was on played That's not what we're talking about. Okay, so Scott McLaughlin was running a livery we usually associate with Joseph Newgarden, and Joseph Newgarden was running the livery that we generally associate with Scott McLaughlin. Scott, correct. Not Kyle, right? So now at Gateway, if you noticed, right, Ryan Blaney was driving the Dent Wizard car, which we usually associate with the number 2 car, and Cindric is driving the Menards livery that we usually associate with Ryan Blaney. So it's just kind of interesting that Penske's had these musical chairs with the sponsors, and I don't know if that's by the sponsors' bequest to increase their amount of diecast that they get on, or they increase the amount of airtime that they get. But I just found it kind of interesting that this is the second time Team Penske has kind of swapped liveries amongst drivers. So again, like I say, it's as stupid as the windshield wiper thing I noticed, but actually Richard had a good answer for that. And I'm sure that Richard doesn't have a good answer for that, because he's as many race cars as he's worked on, he's never made a decision on livery. Have you?
I don't think so. No, I probably scratched a few of them, but I know.
So, but anyway, it's just a weird thing I noticed. So,
yeah, it's very interesting for sure. It seems like we talked about it as the business practices. If I don't know about the diecast ordeal, because they're having trouble selling diecast meeting certain like minimum quota. So it's interesting. Back in the day, they make diecast regardless, but these days it's got to meet a minimum quantity amount before it could be sold. If it doesn't meet a minimum quantity, it gets canceled. That's how the business.
Yeah. 2/3 of the diecasts that are announced and offered for pre-order are never made.
In
NASCAR.
Yep, and a large chunk of them are the 43 of Eric Jones, which is kind of unfortunate because
Another guy who had a pretty good day at Gateway.
Yeah, top 10 and with the worldwide technology sponsorship, so that'll impress all those fine folks from worldwide technology, the track, and also the business itself.
He was running the Bomarito livery, right?
Yeah,
and that is Frank Bomarito, who owns the bulk of the car dealerships in that area. So he's the same guy that promotes the IndyCar race, and they're very, very, very big business in that area. That's St. Louis suburb. It's really in Southern Illinois, but good on them to put their name on that car. Help that Petty group out, and Eric Jones paying them back with a pretty good run.
Yeah, he's nearly a race behind as far as the cutoff line in terms of points, but if he keeps he just needs to find some more consistency to where he can get more runs. So I'm just curious to see how Jones does for the rest of the season, because I feel like there's so many drivers on the outside looking in that would be much closer had they had luck on their side, like Suarez and Jones and all those guys. So
absolutely, yeah. So now, Richard, do we have a Formula One race coming up this weekend?
We have Baku this weekend. Streets of Baku.
Yep, in Azerbaijan.
Indeed.
Which is Baku is a lot easier to say. Yeah, that's a circuit I genuinely like. I really like the Baku circuit. I think it's funny that they put up the tarps on the old buildings to make them look like to make it look a little more Monaco-esque.
Yes, but they do have a genuine castle.
Yes. Yes. Actual castle. Yep. The castle is not fake. It's just the apartments along the straightaway that are. But let's
go. Sorry, it's like I think we should all be impressed. We have not had drama on that very tight and narrow circuit. They have held their own.
I think.
There's been a few, but
the drivers do a great job there.
Yeah.
So let's so Richard, just preview that a little. Tell us who you think is going to be strong there at Baku, because it's a bit of a different circuit than Monaco, which was the other true street circuit, but because you got a lot more chance to get a lot more speed going on here.
Yeah, they've got probably it's not a pure straight, but one of the longest flat out stretches on the calendar, coming from the final turn through to turn one there. I think you'll probably see something we've seen, similar to a lot of races so far this season. Probably the Ferrari fastest in qualifying, but you just think that Red Bull maybe have the edge on race pace, which is pretty impressive, really. They've been very good. Maybe it's purely strategy. Maybe it is just the car's dynamics, which allows them to be a little bit more gentle on the tires and have a more effective race performance there. But no, it should be interesting. I think it's of the newer circuits we've been to, I think it's one of the better ones, and it does lead to some pretty exciting racing there. So while I'm discussing it, I'll go ahead and make my pick just to stop everybody else getting in there ahead of me. But I'm going to go with Checo to go back to back and put a little bit of pressure on Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship.
Oh, that's pretty bold, man. Put a little pressure on Jos Verstappen to bitch at the team more for not favoring his son.
Yeah, pathetic.
So I'm gonna pick Charles because he's faltered the last couple, and I think that Leclerc is gonna go ahead and stake his claim here and win this one. So, Louise, what do you think? Who do you like for Baku? Okay, so Louise is evidently.
Oh, sorry.
You are.
I think it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough to beat Red Bull, but if there's gonna be one guy that I think could surprise people, let's go with George.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'd like to see George Russell win a race. Yeah.
Yeah, he
But yeah,
deserves
it's
it.
going to be tough to beat Red Bull. You're looking at Verstappen looking for vengeance from last year in the race that a tire cost him the win and let go and took away what should have been his win to begin with. So he's going to be tough. Perez, he's not far behind in the world championship, but we'll see how he does. That's why I said last time it's as good as it's going to get, in my opinion, for him. But we'll see.
I mean,
we'll see.
Another thing to consider before we drop off. I know we've only got a couple of minutes left, I think, but because this weekend as well is, I believe this weekend is Le Mans 24 Hour as well, or is that next weekend? I think it's next weekend. But we're in that window of Le Mans, which is just a fantastic spectacle, and great fun. If and actually, it's this weekend, isn't it? And I think that's streamed or on a lot of streaming services, and I think it's on one of the main network state channels over here, at least chunks of it. I think it's quite good.
Yeah, it's been on Motor Trend the last couple of years.
So some pretty good coverage of it, actually, and I'm pretty impressed. And it's a great race. Fantastic race, fantastic cars, real test. Yep. I mean, what Le Mans is now is what NASCAR used to be back in the 50s and 60s, an endurance test. That's why you have 500-600 mile races. Now every car out there can do 500-600 miles, so it's defeated the point, really. Of having races of that length, but on the endurance racing, it's the pinnacle. It's a fantastic race, and if you do get a chance to watch some of it, please do.
And are we not Hendrick entering a?
That's next year.
Next year.
Oh, that's next year. Okay, all right. So so we'll have to.
But there's a very, 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 very slim chance for Juan Pablo Montoya to get the Triple Crown. He's going to need a lot of luck in all those LMP1 cars to have problems to get an LMP2 car to win overall. There's a slim chance. Yeah, I know. That's why I say very, very, very slim chance for Montoya.
Alonso didn't enter the Indy 500 this year, and he had as good a chance as Montoya did.
That is very true. I have to mention that little semi-factor that Montoya will be running, but there's a slim chance of him winning the triple because of the classes that he's in.
It could happen, honestly, but I doubt it. And the funny thing is, if you get a class win at Le Mans, evidently that doesn't count towards your Triple Crown because, Mario's got a class win at Le Mans and nobody ever looks at that. So
at the end of the day, I think it should because you're winning what you can compete against.
Yeah, and the thing is, Mario didn't have a Monaco win, so that's why he's not.
Yeah, well, the Triple Crown is number one, not official.
Yeah,
it's Graham Hill invented it.
And there's also like a technical side where it's like if you win the world championship, it alternates and all that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So Mario has the world championship, right? It's a world championship, Indy 500, Le Mans, right? Of course, Mario can make up his own Triple Crown and say Daytona 500, Indy 500, and world championship. So I would say it's whatever you want to be because it's not an official trophy, but the one that Graham Hill established and invented is kind of the more recognized one. So we got just a few minutes left, but Louise, you are headed off to Sonoma to watch the Cup cars this weekend. So let's talk about Sonoma real quickly, and you and I make some picks.
Yeah, it is back to the smaller layout where you don't go through the carousel, you go through the more wide open layout, like the chute, that's what they call it, but they remove the turn 4 rumble strips on the driver's left because of the new car, which is from a photographer point of view, it's kind of a shame. They've also repainted the rumble strip, which is not getting rave reviews, but I'm going to go with Martin Truex Jr., not just because of the fact that Cole Pearn will be around the team this weekend, but it's also the fact that we're back to the chute layout. So, and he was the last guy to win it there. So let's go with Truex.
Okay, and I'll go with Chase Elliott because this guy has not had a lot go well
in terms of
lately, yeah. So, but
and he's still
this year,
he's the regular season championship.
I know, right? But he's not hit the win column yet. But
he did. He won Dover.
Oh, that's right. He did. Okay.
Blaney has the one who hasn't won a points paying race yet.
That's right. Blaney won the All-Star. Yeah. So
yeah, he's just been involved in a lot of incidents this season, and still somehow finds a way to be racking up the results he needs to pull away from Rochester staying in the regular season standings.
Right, but I'm still going to go with Chase because Chase is always good on a road course, and I really feel like the new car actually fits Chase's style better than guys like who'd you say, Truex?
Yeah,
yeah,
and there's still those wild rumors of him. Maybe this is being this final year, but we can talk about that next week.
Talk about that next week. Yeah, I mean, is Allmendinger entered it in the Cup race?
That is correct. He is.
So that's another guy to watch out for right there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He could come in and play spoiler, take away one of those winning your in spots from the Cup regulars. So
yeah,
that's a
Coda.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a guy you never want to count out on a road course, as evidenced by this last weekend at Portland. Yeah. So
and he has a chip on his shoulder too, because in 2018 he won a stage and the car broke and finished last when he had a strong chance of probably putting himself in the playoffs in 2018, which was his last full Cup year.
Wow, 18. Yeah, golly, it's been a while since he's been full-time in a Cup. So, all right. So, well, we are out of time. So, man, good show tonight, guys. I really appreciate talking to you. I hope you folks that enjoy listening to us, enjoy listening to us as we enjoy talking. I want to thank Dan Blay. I want to thank Mark Dill, our sponsors. I want to thank the Hoobazoo Radio Network. I want to thank Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. And again, I want to thank you folks who listen to us. But until next week, man, good night.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoobazoo.com.
Enter website.